Okay. Hello, Alex, Chris, Melinda, Dr. Swaroop, welcome.
Hey.
Hi.
Well, welcome. It's great to have you on board here today. We have got like I mentioned earlier, we've got a good lineup of speakers, but I'm really keen about this particular panel session because we've got a diverse set of expert leaders here that will bring some unique perspectives around resilience. But resilience is a big word. We want to hear from your areas of expertise as well, and we'll draw on some of those experiences. So I'll give a brief introduction about yourselves, but I'm keen to hear. I don't want to steal your thunder from each of you. So I'd want everyone to have the opportunity to introduce yourselves, you describe your journey, and then we'll spend about 5 minutes on that, and then we'll get on to the actual discussion here. So we've got Alex Pedley. Alex is a health and performance expert. You're a CEO and founder of your own organization. You've got lots of experience globally within health and performance. Definitely want to hear from you. We've got Dr. SwaroopSavanur, who is based in Asia, in India, who's a mindset mastery and peak performance coaching expert. And you have delved into the areas of athletes, Olympic athletes and teams, and help them change their peak performance measurements as well, and productivity as well. Want to hear from you. Chris, you're a leadership and organizational expert based here in the UK. You've got a diverse background yourself, so definitely want to hear about your visionary leadership. And Melinda, here in the UK as well, you are a curiosity expert and leader and founder as well. And we want to integrate your thoughts and insights into the conversation because this is also something new. So let me come back to Alex. Alex, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, please?
Sure. So I work with executives from all around the world to help them take control of their health to really achieve peak performance, but also quality of life, really. So I've been working with executives for over 20 years now. I started my career working predominantly in the city of London, but now we're all over the world. I released my book, Reach Your Peak, back end of 2021, and essentially it's sort of my take on the science, but also insights of working with executive entrepreneurs for that period of time. And it's based on sort of 9 key habits that I see to improve our health now and performance now, but also to increase longevity, quality of life, so that we're able to do all the things that we want to do as we age, and also live best quality life now.
Wonderful, Alex. Thank you. We'll be delving into those specific topics very shortly. Dr. SwaroopSavanur, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for having me here, and hello to everyone over there. I've been a mental conditioning and a peak performance coach, and it's been 20 years since the time I started this journey. And I think so that over these years, I've realized that every year as we go, we start realizing that mindset now plays even a bigger role in achieving your dreams, actualizing your potential, and achieving peak performance. And my journey actually started way back in 2001, and I primarily work with Olympic athletes, elite athletes from various sports disciplines in India. And over a period of time, I have journeyed through working with not just elite athletes, but also started my company called as My Mental Coach, through which we work with teen athletes, because I think so it's important to intercept and prevent rather than correct, by providing them with mindset tools that they can adopt as a lifestyle, right? Rather than something that you're adding on after negative experiences. And along with that, we also work with students, and very recently we also started working with corporates. And that's my work that I do currently.
Wonderful, Dr. Swaroop. Thank you so much, and we'll delve again into some of those topics as we get into the core topic. Chris, welcome. You're based in the UK. You've got a wonderful background as well. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Yeah, I come from a corporate background originally. I had a proper job running businesses in the UK and abroad. And then about 20 years ago, I transitioned to initially a kind of management consultant role, which morphed into facilitation and coaching, and these days it's leadership development. So my focus is really on helping people that are running teams and organizations essentially be happy with what they're doing. My measurement of success, not that you can measure it, but assessment of success is the predominant feeling that you are living with day to day. So it doesn't matter how much money you're making, although that's always nice. But if you're happy, if you're exuberant, if you are satisfied, fulfilled, and itching to get on with the job, then that's where I want to be, and that's where I want my clients to be as well. And that's very much all about the inner world, the inner dynamics of thinking, feeling, and perception. Very, very much less to do with the outer world of effects, which we have very little direct control over. So that's what I do.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you very much. MelindaMulcahy, you're also based here in the UK, and I'm curious about your curiosity expertise in the business, individuals, and innovation. Well, we'll hear a little bit more about that in detail, but tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So I run the World Curiosity Organization. I help structure processes within the World Ethics Organization as well. I'm an ambassador for Wales, and also I have my own business, which is CuriousU.com, and that teaches people how to use curiosity. So essentially, what I'm here to do is to introduce people to the concept of curiosity. How did I find it? Through a set of circumstances which were most unfortunate. And I realized over a period of time that it was my curiosity that was my one constant. And since then, since noticing that, I was then able to pull it apart, try and understand it, so that then I could capitalize on it more. And now I help organizations and individuals to be able to create curious cultures in organizations, because it's really important in terms of not just innovation, but diversity and inclusion. It is according to the World Ethics, there's so many world organizations that I'm dealing with at the moment. The World Economic Forum, curiosity is your #1 metacognitive skill. And so I teach people really how it works and how to capitalize on it. So individuals, organizations, leaders, anyone who wants to get curious with me.
Awesome. And this is, all these topics that we've just raised with Alex, with Dr. Swaroop, Chris, and yourself, Melinda, they're all related topics, and there's a convergence with leadership and with resilience. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you. You've authored a book around health and fitness, and in today's world, it's just becoming even more increasingly, pressure oriented. How do you recommend busy leaders, but even individuals, how do you recommend that they integrate effective health strategies without compromising productivity?
Well, it's an interesting one, right? Because by integrating health strategies into your routine, you're going to increase productivity off the back of it. But what I often see that people believe they need to do to improve their health is to make big changes. You know, you get people who think they need to work out 5 times a week, need to completely change their diet, and they believe it's always big changes. And for me, I always believe in structure initially. So it's sort of reverse engineering your routine to see where you have pockets of time, because a lot of the time people have more time in their day than they believe they do. And then, you know, when it comes to exercise, we know when we're exercising, we're going to increase energy levels, we're going to increase focus, and off the back of it, again, we're going to increase productivity. So finding a period within the day where you're able to get like a dedicated workout, and if someone's not doing anything at the very beginning, 1 workout a week would be a great thing to do. I'm also a big believer in just going for a walk. I think it's probably one of the sort of the least utilized way that we can increase productivity, you know, creativity, increase energy levels, reduce stress levels. So I don't think we always need to go out for, say, a 30-45-minute walk, but say, for example, someone is in a meeting and in back-to-back meetings all day. I always believe we can try and find short periods in your day where you're just up and about, you're just moving, and then actually having dedicated breaks within the day. Now, this isn't for people, you know, if someone's traveling, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But this is when you're actually structured and at home, or in the office or wherever you are, having these dedicated breaks. We're able to get even a 10-minute walk in just to increase productivity, and just get some energy going, and just some exercise in. I also think 2 quite undervalued parts of the day are just before we go to sleep and the morning. You know, the way we start the day has a big impact on how we feel during it. And again, the evening, a lot of people are working right until the last minute before they're going to sleep, or, you know, they're checking their phones, they're on their phones, and then this impacts quality of sleep. If we're not sleeping very well, then increases stress levels for the following day, but also productivity decline. So it's creating small bits of structure within each part of the day, to be able to get the small bits of exercise, getting good quality sleep, starting the day in the right way. And when it comes to nutrition, which is sort of the last real area, again, a lot of people eat on the run. So they're trying to eat whenever they can. And to me, what that actually does is it increases decisions through the day, which then can lead to decision fatigue. So actually having some sort of planning within your day for actually what you're going to eat can really, really help. I'm not saying prepping for your food, because for a lot of entrepreneurs and executives, it's not always something that they can do. But having go-to food that you have, so it sort of removes decisions about what you're going to eat. Because again, if you're trying to make decisions on what you're trying to eat, what you're going to eat, and you've had a really hectic back-to-back meetings, you're probably not going to make the healthiest food choice. So if you've already got something which is sort of pre-planned, you already know sort of what you can go to, so it's an easy option you can quickly have. Again, it's going to increase your chances of having better food choices.
Alex, I've got some follow-on questions for you around this, but I want to come to Dr. Swaroop very shortly on peak performance, but I'll also be inviting Melinda and Chris to speak about this particular topic here. But Dr. Swaroop, from your perspective, you've dealt with athletes, as you mentioned, elite athletes, teams. Tell us a little bit about how that intersection between what Alex was mentioning about health, and how does that interrelate with peak performance?
Great question, Stephen, because I think so what Alex mentioned in a way is about how can individuals, first of all, start making the right choices, isn't it? And I feel that peak performance is a choice. Do I want to change from a default mindset and a behavior that I have? And can I start going towards or training myself towards a different way of looking at how I want to manage myself so that I can achieve my potential? And I think so when what Alex was mentioning about health and nutrition, which I think so are one of the most biggest stumbling blocks in achieving your performance, right, on a daily basis, to develop that consistency in what you're doing. And what I see with athletes is that athletes are naturally ingrained towards having these base habits, so to say, right? About taking care of their body, taking care of their nutrition, taking care about, how they're going to manage their time. These are things, these are structures that are already built into them. And that is why they reach a stage of performance where they can, really come at a level till the time there is a plateau period that happens. And when there is a plateau period that happens in their lives, is when the real part of mindset starts coming into play, isn't it? And therefore, I also feel that along with the choice of performance, peak performance, I think so peak performance is actually not a destination, interestingly. I think so peak performance is a process, right? It's a process of developing a consistent mindset toward reaching that biggest or the most challenging goal that you want to achieve. And how can you do that? By breaking your mindset barriers, by being disciplined, by developing the right habits, and by embracing the challenges that are coming your way. And I think so it is this complex, so to say, of variables which we can't always control. But how can we start controlling those which we inherently can't control? And how can we create an objective around it that we can pursue? I think so is what peak performance is all about. And my job is to help simplify this through certain specific processes that they can use. And I feel at the start, this is how I look at peak performance,
Yeah. Okay. No, this is wonderful. And just building on that same theme. So Alex was talking about, you know, different health routines that you want to put in place. And Dr. Swaroop, you mentioned about making choices, which I'm a strong believer. I mean, when you start making decisions and choices, you are intentionally making your course, course of path to your destination, albeit a journey. Melinda, from your perspective, and we'll come back to that, Dr. Swaroop, but Melinda, from your perspective, you described about curiosity here. In your experience, how are you finding, just based on what Alex mentioned, based on what Dr. Swaroop mentioned, when we look at businesses, individuals, and that curiosity aspect, how do you instill, or how do you think entrepreneurs or individuals need to instill curiosity, or how do they need to leverage the concept of curiosity within themselves?
Well, first of all, it's really interesting that two people on this panel have already brought up the concept of choices. The travesty is majority of people don't realize that they have a choice, because it is actually a very fast cognitive process. We don't really realize that we have that choice until it's highlighted. And essentially what's going on is that, if I could just briefly dig deep into the metacognitive process, because nobody that I'm aware of has ever been taught how to think properly. So we were taught how to, go through complex equations, write various different wonderful novels and things like that. But we weren't taught, at least as far as I'm aware, I don't believe that there is any educational system on the planet that teaches the metacognitive process of thinking. And in that process of thinking, it's really, really fast, but it is quite complicated. And the process involves a number of information that's coming at you at any one time that the brain is computing. And subject to you asking the right questions determines the outcome. So what's really interesting is even just choice. When I realized probably about 15 years ago that I had a choice, first of all, I was like, no, I don't have a choice. So I immediately backed up and was like, hang on, are you telling me all the crap that's going on in my life is because of choice, that I've made the wrong choices? And so with choice comes an element of you need to take responsibility. And that scares people. And it doesn't matter whether you're a peak performer, if you're a peak performer, or whether you are just a person who is working on, any kind of even a menial job, for instance. The truth is that everybody has a choice, but we need to take responsibility of that. And the moment that we do take responsibility, we can then start to make better choices. But what we need to do is re-engineer the concept of choice, because we're re-engineering how our brain functions and how we think. So where curiosity comes into play, first of all, is to be able to question that process. And then to be able to, when you understand how curiosity works, you can then trigger the brain to start working for you, because your mind is a seeking machine. It will, if you give it a command, it will seek the answer for you. But what's really interesting is that we're seeking all the time. We're just seeking the wrong thing. So it's about understanding how we re-engineer the process or recondition the process of thinking. And so your decisions that are formed from the choices that you make, or the choices that come from the decisions that you make, whatever you call it. I mean, I know that Tony Robbins talks about it's in the moments of decision, destiny is shaped, but it's not. It's actually not. It is the thought process that comes behind, but before the decision that's formed. Does that make sense? So it's about really looking at, okay, what is going on? What is informing those decisions before you're able to make them? And that involves understanding that you do have a choice. So when you start asking questions, the better quality questions, what I mean by that is a question that has a positive intention, then you are able to trigger the brain to start working for you, and also the body, by the way, because you get a hit of dopamine as you do it. So when we understand those questions, when we understand what's informing those decisions, and every single thought has thousands, if not millions, of computations working in the background that we don't even know it is working in the background, because there's lots of neural connections. But you can get through it very, very quickly with intention and asking the right question. And it's really interesting because I know that Simon Sinek put why back onto the concept of using why as your motivational tool. But what's really interesting is that the why question can trigger your ancient brain. And I'll give you a prime example of that. When you were a child, what is the first thing your mother or father asked you when you did something wrong? Why did you do that? So whilst it's good, what we need to remember, there are other ways of asking questions, such as how, which is a really great way to start a question. And that will trigger you to start taking actions. So the question, the how, what, where, and then the intention, which helps.
Thank you, Melinda. And it helps when you actually bring it in that with that kind of a description from making choices, or reinforcing the fact of making choices, and the types of questions as well, because that influences your way of thinking day to day, but also into the future as well. And I'm going to call on Chris. Chris, you're the author of The Broken CEO, and you've had great experiences with leaders. You've had your own experiences as well. But what are your thoughts around integrating health, what Melinda mentioned around curiosity, or what's your view around how organizations or leaders or entrepreneurs operate in today's world?
Well, very interested to hear what Melinda said. and I think the subject of choice is key to all of this. My own experience is that for much of the time, many of us actually don't have any choice at all. We are not making conscious choices. We are being driven by circumstance and by what I loosely call mindset. The other panelists might use it in a different way, but it's almost we're kind of, by being conditioned by mindset, we are literally dragging the past into the present. And when we do that, the option of choice becomes very, very restricted. Now, curiosity is a wonderful thing because it is, and Melinda, please disagree if you don't like this, but for me, it is the aspect of it that's so attractive is that it's non-judgmental. It does not impose any kind of external view, which again will generally be from the past. It is open in the present to what's going on. Now, when we can bring ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I'm really talking about our attention or our consciousness, into the present, then we can really see what's going on. Our perception is not clouded, it's not filtered by mindset, by what's happened in the past, or fears about what's going to happen in the future. It's in the present. And when you are in the present, rather than being a fleeting moment, is actually an infinite amount of time. It's eternal now. And when you get into that state of being, which is a state of consciousness, everything becomes a lot clearer. And you can begin to see some of the cognitive processes that Melinda was talking about in operation, because you're not in the wood, you're outside of the wood looking at the trees. You're not immersed in this morass of cognitive stuff, most of which is not particularly helpful, at least mine isn't. I wouldn't want to judge yours, but mine is not always helpful. And the most powerful thing, I think, for me has been the realization that I am not my thoughts. I am the observer of my thoughts. And if I can observe what's going on, it gives me far greater discretion over the choices that I make. How does this impact leadership? Well, it improves the experience of leadership immeasurably, but it also obviously improves the decision-making process. And leadership, at least in the conventional view of leadership, decision-making is absolutely central to that. How do you get into that state? And I'll be brief, but I think one of the most powerful tools, I shouldn't call it a tool, but it's a thing that I've used ever since my teens, is the process of or the practice of meditation, because meditation allows you to disconnect from that identification with the normal cognitive processes, even just for 15 minutes a day, and it impacts the rest of the day without any doubt at all. And also there is an additive impact over the years and decades that you practice. So I would certainly advocate meditation as a very powerful supporter of leadership and entrepreneurship. And I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah, no, thank you, and we'll come back to that. And it's a good segue to Alex, the question I'm going to ask around health. Well-being, health, these are new concepts in probably in the last decade and a half within organizations. I mean, like in some regions, it's been different. People take well-being and health very seriously within the corporate environment as well. But let's just delve a little bit more deeper into this. Alex, Can you kindly share some practical tips? I know some of them were mentioned by yourself and a few other people here. Can you share some practical tips for individuals, for the workforce, or even for leaders to maintain their physical and mental health? But not just, you know, in any environment, but when they're actually going through growth and scaling, for example, and during challenging times, because we're always facing challenging times.
Yeah, it's a good question, because a lot of the time when we're talking about practical tips and the habits that we ingrain, unfortunately, when we go through busy times, especially when something's new or something really ramps up in what we're doing, so a new job, or when a business is starting to scale, we're getting very, very busy. What we can end up doing is just returning to what's worked previously. Okay, so we work hard, we have less breaks, we get less time for exercise, we work later, we start earlier. And what happens off the back of that is actually productivity declines. We feel that we're, by doing more, or in terms of in hours, we're getting more done. But actually what happens over a period of time is our performance ends up declining. Okay, so the productivity begins to decline, because we end up sleeping worse, we have less breaks, we have less downtime. So a lot of the time, it's actually just really small things that we can integrate into a routine that make a big difference, especially when things are very, very busy. And I sort of touched on it before, as you mentioned, but I'm just a big believer in setting structured breaks within a day and just having some mental downtime, because what a lot of people do that, you know, that I work with, is they just go. But they're successful people, they're used to getting a lot of work done and really pushing through, and they get caught up in it, and it becomes a new normal. So having just periods where just to go away, and you know, you mentioned meditation. Meditation is phenomenal. I meditate myself, but it's actually quite a hard sell to someone who's very, very busy, because it's the actual return on your investment of time seems relatively small, even though it's not, and we know it's not. So even taking a break for, say, 5 minutes, removing itself from desk, no technology, because again, a lot of the time, what do people do when they leave their desk? They look at their phone. So they're just staying switched on at all time. And I think of it like a TV. You turn the TV off, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of people are switched on all the way through the day. They're always on some form of technology. So having just a period away where you can do, you know, like the meditation, a bit of deep breathing, getting out for a walk, what it does is it creates that element of control. And a lot of time when we move from a positive form of stress, you know, eustress, into distress, a negative form of stress is when we lose that element of control. And that's where, again, it comes back down to having that structure within the day, where you say, actually, I'm going to have a break at this time, I'm going to have a break at this time, a break at this time. I'm actually going to dedicate some time in the morning for me. So to work out, you know, if someone's into meditation, some meditation, just some control in the day, having a period before we sleep to be able to just have some actual real mental downtime.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to that because, again, we're so switched on all the way through the day, that people, what we see, we track people's heart rate variability, and we get our clients on ECG over a 3-day period. And what we actually find is people's biggest stress reaction is just before they go to sleep. Right, and this is executives. And why it's sort of my opinion on why that happens is because people are in meetings all day, then they have to actually work at the end of the day because they've had no time during the day, and then the only time that they can actually consider and think about what's happened in a day is just before bed. And obviously that's the worst time to really be thinking about what you need to do the following day, what you need to do during that day, because the brain becomes overactive, it impacts their sleep. So actually having some way to get some downtime. So yeah, I really always do. I always bring it back to that, creating that element of structure where we're able to get mental downtime, a little bit of exercise, some deep breathing, anything like that in. And again, when it comes to structure, having some form of structured nutrition within the day, again, removing decisions.
No, wonderful. And just coming back to what Chris was mentioning about meditation, and we're working through circumstances. I think of it more about converting that to working through possibilities as well. But the practical tips that I'm thinking from a mental perspective, definitely the meditation works. Then from a physical perspective, taking those intentional breaks and doing some exercises. And I'll invite Melinda very shortly here. But Dr. Swaroop, from your perspective, you've cracked the code around productivity. I know productivity is pretty large word, and it's used in different ways. But share with us, please, when we look at resilience, when we look at productivity in teams or even in individuals, what kind of strategies do you recommend for building resilience in businesses, business teams, as particularly those that are facing rapid changes or disruptions? And I'm intentionally saying rapid changes and disruptions because that is the world we are in right now. So we need to kind of just embrace that. But go on.
That's a great question, and I think so. Let's look at this word called resilience, right? I think so. We are naturally very, very resilient. I think so. Humans as a species have been resilient, and that's the reason why we have come here to where we are. The key is to help people identify a process by which they can keep being resilient is, I think so, more fundamental question. Because we can be resilient when it comes to our survival instincts. But when it comes to our performance instincts, when it comes to my ability to consciously drive my potential up to manage the change that's happening around me, requires a different kind of a resilience. Because I need to then break my mental barriers and switch to a different kind of working pattern, right? So to say, that's going to give me that, that edge around my competition or in the workplace that I'm working in, or even for companies to really go or scale to the next level in terms of the environment that they're in. And therefore, I think so the fundamental question that comes over here is, how do we embrace challenges? Because now, for example, my clients, the people whom I work with are athletes. Now, unlike corporate or, where the performance is not immediately evident or tangible in front of you. But for athletes, if they start losing matches, if they start scoring less, if a team starts losing, it's there stark in your face. Right? Unlike what we see in the corporate world, because you don't really see that immediate feedback about the lack of productivity or an enhanced productivity and how that's translating into either a good performance or a bad performance. And that's why for athletes, you need to provide them with specific solutions that's going to help them change their performance into a more positive performance. And I feel the time has come today for people to adopt these athlete-like mindsets, to start developing and achieving peak performance through specific things that they can do. And in a way, I think so when our panelists today talked about it, if I can mention 3 practical exercises, if you look at it, it's about asking the right questions. Like Melinda said, Alex talked about having the right routines and habits. Chris talked about, meditation as a very important practice. But along with that comes a natural fear of failure whenever we are faced with circumstances that are changing, that are dynamic, and that we can't control. And it might be on an organizational level, it might be on a relationship or an individual level. And at that time, how do I embrace them becomes a fundamental question that I need to answer for me to change my way of looking at that challenge. And I think so this is, I feel, a missing link or the gap between how athletes are able to develop or start achieving peak performance versus individuals who do not have that immediate feedback about that lack of performance that probably they are showcasing, right? And I feel therefore embracing challenges and having ways to manage your failures or that fears that come into you become a very important part of this whole mix. And I think so people, and the starting point in this journey comes from self-awareness. We can be aware of the reports, or we can be aware of things that are tangible, but how can we be aware about our own mindset? Because it's inherently abstract and subjective in nature. And the key is to develop a way in which you can objectivize something which is inherently subjective in nature. And one of the practical tools is to develop so one of the things that I do is through my proprietary Zeta 6 mindset assessment is a way in which people can actually identify how their mind is so that they can start getting customized strategies to start improving and going on the path towards peak performance.
Wonderful, Dr. Swaroop. Chris, I'll be coming back to you on culture and in the corporate world with leaders as well. But I'm curious to hear about Melinda. Just building on some of the things that you mentioned earlier around curiosity. Or share with us how fostering curiosity in the workplaces impacts individuals, their productivity, but also what are some of the steps that you would actually put in place or recommend putting in place so that individuals and businesses can adopt that and embody that within individuals?
Sure. So there are three different traits or types, if you like, of curiosity. One is intellectual curiosity. So that is regarding your environment. You become very curious. Those people who read a lot of books would be classed as intellectually curious. You also have empathetic curiosity. So that is when you're curious towards others. But what a lot of people forget is the interpersonal curiosity. That is curiosity within yourself. So curiosity, those three elements. Now you'll find that CEOs, for instance, say, yes, I'm really curious, which by definition isn't curiosity, is it? So it's about understanding that, for instance, CEOs would be very high on intellectual and empathetic curiosity, but score very low generally on intrapersonal curiosity. And what Dr. Swaroop was talking about was essentially awareness, and awareness cannot happen without curiosity. So what's going on is that you have all these various different outcomes, awareness being one, meditation, with the exception of transcendental meditation or monastic meditation. There are lots and lots of different types of meditation, but you still need curiosity to be able to engage in that process. And it's understanding where it sits in that process. And for instance, gratitude. If you want to be grateful, the very first question you would ask is, what am I grateful for, right? Well, that is curiosity. So it's always there. And it's about understanding. If you want to increase your potential for success, which is essentially why we're here, you do need that interpersonal curiosity. So you need to get very, very curious about your thought processes. And what's amazing about curiosity is, and again, this goes back to challenge and uncertainty, essentially, is that curiosity is the only way that you can navigate uncertainty and challenge and change. So by asking simple questions, you can very easily navigate. So that comes down to it really is the very base mechanism that you should always start with. Because the outcome, everyone is focused on the outcome, but it's how you get there that's vitally important. For instance, resilience. And it's true to say that if we've gone to a certain age, one would be relatively resilient in a particular area maybe, but that resilience is built on what we've learned in the past. So what goes on is essentially that information has been built in the past, and that is because our feedback loop, which goes on in the background, which don't even know happens, is based on learning. What did we learn? So to navigate, going back to if you think you're really resilient, but then you're struggling with challenge and change, then the question becomes, how can you navigate that simply by using your curiosity to ask the right questions. But when you get to the end of whatever challenge it is, whether you think you failed or not, ask yourself the question, how could I have done better? What did I learn and how could I have done better? And that feeds your resilience and builds that resilience to make it stronger. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there is actually one above resilience, in my opinion. And this is my concept. And that is transcendence, the ability to welcome challenges. Because we have to get to a point, and you'll see it in really, really high achievers. If they've conquered one particular area, they've done whatever they needed to do in that area, they will then go out and look for another challenge. And that, to me, is where we need to be edging our bets. So how do we get there? By learning. How do we learn? Through curiosity. Curiosity is the main function to the learning center of your brain that also feeds memory. So it works as a feedback loop. Curiosity is always there, but it's working in the background. If you become really conscious of it, then you will be able to achieve much more. And I have a little acronym called FAIL, F-A-I-L, and that is forward advancement in learning. I look at every single failure through FAIL, forward advancement in learning. And if we can just all think more along the lines of what have I learned from this, and how can I do better for the future, then we will navigate challenges as they arise much, much, much faster, and even start to change the way you look at challenge and go, brilliant, this is another opportunity for me to learn now. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. Thanks, Melinda. And these are all intersecting topics here. And I want to invite Chris to actually speak about culture and authenticity. And it's building on some of the things that you described previously. How important is, when working with business leaders, entrepreneurs, individuals, how important is authenticity in shaping that company culture or even the culture within yourself? And what impact does that have on, the ability to navigate through those business challenges? Any thoughts? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, great question, but I have to throw a question back at you, I'm afraid. What do you mean by authenticity?
Well, let's talk about that. It's about being true to yourself.
Yeah, I like being true to yourself, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, because for me, authenticity is about self-reference. It's about finding your inner point of stability, of reference, your anchor, and it's absolutely not about importing external points of reference. And this is why I rail rather against the idea of ethics, morals, and value systems, quite controversially, because they are all imported from the outside. And what I advocate is always, by all means, listen to everything that's going on around you, that what people are saying, their opinions, and assess them. But at the end of the day, you have to come back to yourself and ask yourself, how do I feel about this? Never mind what other people feel about it. How do I feel about it? That for me is authenticity. It's being true to yourself. To thine own self be true. It's probably if not the only, it's certainly a significant pillar in the culture of any organization. Culture, lots of definitions of that. I won't ask you for a definition. The one I use is collective behavior. And it is, a lot of people think of it as being a kind of distributed responsibility. And of course it is, you know, it's the product of many people, many stakeholders within an organization. However, there is always a single person within the organization that has more impact on culture than anyone else. And that has to be the leader. And it is the leader's responsibility to take responsibility for the culture. You occasionally hear little anecdotes where the CEO brings in the HR director and says, we need culture change, go away and do it. And you know that you're on a hiding to nothing if you take that approach. It will not work. The behavior of a team, collective behavior of a team and an organization is largely, not solely, but largely based on the behavior of the leader. And until the leader understands that and takes responsibility for it, then the culture will be haphazard. You might be lucky, you might be unlucky, but it will be haphazard. It will be pretty well directionless. The leader has to be aware that everything they do, everything they say, the way they behave, the decisions they make are all feeding into the culture. And also critically, not just the things that they do, but the things that they don't do. The issues and problems that they don't address will all feed into the culture, and it will encourage others to behave in a similar way. Those people for whom that behavior is does not resonate, they will gradually drift away from the organization over time, and the organization will bring in, it will attract people with whom it does resonate. So over time, the culture will become established, and this is why it's very, very difficult to quickly change a culture, usually an adverse culture, without changing the people within the organization. Hence, you find a lot of CEOs when they come in new from outside, the first thing they will do is change their leadership team.
Mm. Yeah. No, wonderful. No, Chris, thank you. Now we are coming to the close of this session here, but I'm keen to seek insights from everyone here with a couple of, I know you've mentioned about some strategies here, but let's remind people, because I'm hearing quite a few things and there's a lot of convergence around the topic of resilience. And Melinda, you talked about transcendence. I'm a big believer of that one as well. Share with us in a minute, each of you, please, starting with Dr. Swaroop, practical strategies, couple from a resilience perspective, from an individual, from an entrepreneur perspective, and your challenge back to the audience. You're on mute.
From a practical perspective, if I have to share three things, I think so. First is your ability to introspect on which are the times you failed and what happened to you that caused the failure. How did that affect you? What were your thoughts and emotions which led to not only probably that failure, but also, how did you react to that failure? The second challenge is to identify your default mindset that's shaping your behavior, that's shaping your actions and decisions. And third is to have a set of mindset tools with a training mechanism that's going to help you change yourself, change your mindset towards achieving that you want to achieve. Because I truly believe that you people need to start training their mind the way they train their body and skills, with repetition and practice. Today, information is everywhere. You know, there are books, there are YouTube videos, there's everything. But people don't change. It's very difficult to make change happen on an individual level. And for that change to happen, the key is not about information, it's not about knowledge, but it's about applied insight. What is it that I can do, and what's the process that will allow me to make that change happen? And that requires a lot of change in the way my thinking is and my emotions are. And I feel that's the path that they need to take. The techniques can be varied. For example, I can share that there's so many athletes that I work with who find meditation very difficult, right? And so, yes, meditation is a go-to strategy, but it's also about simplifying what works for you, and it's identifying what works for you, which is also more important. For others, visualization would be a much more better tactic, or thought control exercises. So I think it's about identifying what works for you. A challenge back very quickly would be to, could you give yourself a 10-day self-awareness exercise by which you ask yourself, can I have a consistent mindset for the next 10 days? And see and measure yourself for a scale of 1 to 10 and see whether you have been able to do that. And if not, ask the right question, why not? Probably that's the way in which you'll get a great insight into how your mind works. And that would be the starting point for the next steps ahead.
Excellent, Dr. Swaroop. Thank you. Alex, wanted to hear from you any practical strategies aside from all the things that you've mentioned, or remind us, and a challenge back to the community. You're on mute.
We're all doing it, right? So I would always think about actually what's the outcome that the person's trying to achieve, and what are the action steps to be able to get there. And then I always believe that we actually want to start with the smallest changes we can make, stuff that is actually achievable, instead of what happens with a lot of people trying to make really big changes. And I think if we think more about the process and the actions that we're taking, and have an idea of what the outcome we're trying to achieve. And if we're talking resilience, you can put that into stress management, feeling better, being able to react to situations in a better way. Actually, what are you trying to achieve? If that be the leader you're trying to be, the lifestyle you're trying to live, and then start with very small action-based progressive changes that you can make to your routine until it's something that becomes a habit, and then add more of the same in until you start building out a lifestyle and the outcome you're trying to achieve. And then the action, I would say, is think about the one thing that you can change now that's going to make a really positive impact on your life. Maybe that be setting a walk into your routine, having more structure in your day, having some time in the morning, having some time in the evening. But what's the one thing that you believe is going to really make the biggest change? And then see if you can stick to it for 5 days, 10 days, and then build from there.
It's baby steps, right? Wonderful, Alex. Melinda, share with us or remind us some of the practical strategies around curiosity, and a challenge back to individuals and to organizations.
Well, I'll start with the challenge, and then that will give you the insights that I'm here to share. Essentially, question everything. So your challenge is to question everything, most particularly your thoughts. Question your thoughts. Are they true? And that is a really great start. Do you have choice? You'll soon realize that actually you do have choice. And is this true? What's going on? How can I improve this? What do I want? I think that those are the most powerful questions anyone can ask at any one time. Or if not, what do I want? What do I prefer? If you can't reach to what, if you think what you want is not achievable. And those questions will very, very quickly divert the brain and shift you into fast gear towards the goals that you seek without you even really having to do much at all.
Wonderful, Melinda. Chris, from your perspective, remind us any practical strategies and
yeah,
yeah.
I have a challenge for you. It's based on the premise, which I'm becoming more and more aware of pretty well every day. And the premise is that what you focus on and the meaning you give it creates your reality. The only choice that anybody, as far as I can make out, ever has throughout their lives is where to place their attention. Everything else is downstream of that.
Mm.
Everything, thought, word and deed are all downstream of that. The only thing that we have complete control over is what we pay attention to. So on the basis that the thinking and the stories we tell ourselves and the meaning we give them creates our reality, my challenge is choose what you pay attention to very, very carefully.
Excellent. Excellent. Right. So there's one thing that I wanted to share before we close. I know we've gone a few minutes over, but one thing that I want to share with is when we look at individuals' resilience, transcendence, and all the great things that you've just shared here, I think it's also maintaining that high vibration within yourself, despite whatever you're navigating through every hour, and even for me as well, and for every human being, you're experiencing negative aspects, positive aspects, but in the face of that, it's also about, maintaining that high vibration and also welcoming. I think we talked about this before, just recognizing that it's okay to have those challenges as well, but and to maintain that vibration at a very high level. Otherwise, you start failing down, you start falling down and fail, and not being able to rise up quickly. So very good insights. There was a lot of convergent topics here. We want the audience to engage with yourselves. Do you have any specific ways, Chris, from your perspective, is there any specific ways that the audience can engage with you?
Yes, email.
Good, excellent.
They are very welcome to email me. And what I can do is the first 10 requests, I can supply an Audible coupon, which will allow them access to my book, The Broken CEO, as an audio book, free of charge.
Okay, excellent. And Dr. Swaroop, audience engagement with yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Email is the go-to choice. I don't mind a WhatsApp also.
Okay.
And that's more faster. And for all those people who are interested in understanding how their mindset works, I'll be happy to provide them with a wonderful assessment that they can do to help them understand using our Zeta 6 mindset assessment that will help them start on their journey towards peak performance.
Excellent. And Melinda, from your perspective, audience engagement with yourself?
LinkedIn, MelindaMulcahy1, I think it is. You can email me, curious at the World Curiosity Organization with a Z. Or just if you want to book a free 30-minute consultation, just go to worldcuriosityorganization.com with a Z.
Excellent. Thank you, Melinda. And Alex, engagement from the audience with yourself?
Yeah, so you can reach out on LinkedIn. It's AlexPedley, or we have a quiz that asks some questions around where they are in terms of their health and performance, and then we send a customized report. So they give them tips and strategies that will be able to help them optimize their health, and that's a scorecard at reachyourpeak.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Alex, Chris, Melinda, Dr. Swaroop, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us on this very, very important topic. There's lots more to talk, but we've actually talked about some great strategies here on how to self-implement and to introduce within organizations, entrepreneurs as well. And I'm looking forward to staying in contact with you. And from an audience perspective, we have the next session in about 20 minutes. But before that, I will be sharing a few lessons on resilience as well as entrepreneurship in the next minute or so after we take a small 60-second break. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are taking a 30-second break here, and then I will talk to some lessons as well on entrepreneurship. So I'm just going to stop recording for a minute.